She was in her bed when I went to bed, and she wasn't there in the morning.
A $1 million reward is on offer to try to solve a 50-year-old cold case. 8-year-old Eloise Worledge vanished from the bedroom of her Beaumaris home on this day in 1976. Her loved ones hoping they're now closer to getting answers.
Somewhere in a quiet house in Beaumaris, Victoria, there is a bedroom window. The fly screen is cut. Not torn. Not ripped in a struggle. Cut, carefully, deliberately, with something sharp enough to slice through wire mesh in a clean, controlled line. And here's the detail that would keep detectives awake for the next 50 years. That cut was made from the inside. Whoever took 8-year-old Eloise Worledge out of that room didn't break in. They were already there. This is the story of a little girl who disappeared without a scream, without a struggle, and without a single trace, and of a family that spent half a century living inside the wreckage of not knowing. Beaumaris, in January of 1976, was the kind of place people moved to specifically so nothing bad would ever happen to their kids. A beachside suburb 20 kilometers south of Melbourne, hugging the shore of Port Phillip Bay. Wide streets. Native tea tree scrub. The kind of neighborhood where doors were left unlocked because nobody could imagine a reason not to. On Scott Street, the Worledge family was living an unremarkable, comfortable life. Lindsay Worledge was a teacher and business advisor. His wife, Patsy, kept the household running for their 3 children, Eloise, the eldest at 8 years old, her 6-year-old sister Anna, and their 4-year-old brother. That evening, Patsy had gone out. Jazz ballet class, then drinks with friends afterward. A normal night out for a mother in her 30s. She came home close to midnight and, as she always did, looked in on her children before turning in herself. Eloise was fast asleep in her bed. Safe. Ordinary. Nothing about the room gave her a single reason to pause. Just days earlier, Eloise had unwrapped a brand new bicycle for Christmas. It was still leaning against the outside of the house. A small, glittering symbol of a childhood that, in a matter of hours, would simply stop. There was a hallway light in the Worledge house. A passage light that stayed on until the last parent went to bed, then was switched off. That night, for reasons that were never fully explained, Lindsay Worledge did not turn it off. He'd gone to bed roughly 90 minutes after Eloise, about an hour after his wife. The front door, it would later emerge, had also been left unlocked. Lindsay didn't realize Patsy had forgotten to secure it. At around 4:45 the next morning, Patsy woke to use the bathroom. She noticed, almost in passing, that the hallway light was now off. She thought nothing of it. She went back to bed. She had no way of knowing that somewhere in that gap, between midnight and 4:45 a.m., her daughter had already vanished from the house. By 7:30 that morning, the house was waking up. Eloise's 4-year-old brother wandered out of his room and noticed something wrong. His sister wasn't there. At first, nobody panicked. Kids wonder. Maybe she was in the kitchen. Maybe she was outside. But room by room, the house came up empty. And then Patsy Worledge walked into her daughter's bedroom and understood, in one single glance, that something had gone catastrophically wrong. The fly screen on Eloise's window had been cut and rolled upward. The window itself, a wind-out style, was pushed to its full extension of 38 centimeters. Wide enough, just barely, for a small body to fit through. Eloise's bed was empty. Her bike was still outside. Nothing else in the room had been touched. No ransacking, no signs of a fight, nothing knocked over. It looked less like a crime scene and more like a magic trick. A child, simply, erased. Patsy's scream brought a neighbor and close friend, Jane Mervis, running to the house. Jane would later recall seeing that bicycle propped against the wall and immediately understanding what it meant. If Eloise had just wandered off to ride it, the bike wouldn't still be there. By that night, what had started as a fairly casual police response, because, as one investigator later put it, children simply didn't go missing in Beaumaris, had exploded into a full-scale operation. What followed became the largest missing persons search operation in Victorian history to that point. Over 250 police officers were deployed. For 18 straight days, they combed every inch of Beaumaris and the surrounding suburbs, parks, nature reserves, vacant lots, the long stretch of foreshore along the bay. More than 6,000 properties were canvassed, door by door, family by family. They found footprints. They found leads. They found a green Holden station wagon that had been spotted near the Worledge home that night and was never identified, despite an exhaustive effort to trace it. A neighbor reported hearing a child cry out around 2 in the morning, followed by the sound of a car door slamming shut. Another local resident described seeing a balding, elderly man wearing glasses, spotted in the days before the disappearance, reportedly in the company of young girls near the local shops. None of it, not one thread, ever led to Eloise. What they did not find was any sign of forced entry. And the flyscreen told its own story. When forensic examiners studied it closely, the cut pattern suggested, though never conclusively proved, that it had been sliced from inside the room, not from outside. If that was true, it meant the horrifying, inescapable possibility investigators couldn't ignore. The person who took Eloise Worledge might not have needed to break in at all. They might have simply been let in. Or already been there. In the weeks that followed, detectives did what detectives always do. They looked first at the people closest to the victim. What they found complicated the picture of the ordinary happy family almost immediately. Investigators learned that both Lindsay and Patsy had, at various points, been involved in extramarital relationships. There were rumors, never confirmed, questioning whether Eloise was biologically Lindsay's daughter at all. And there was the timing. According to information that surfaced years later, Lindsay Worledge was reportedly due to move out of the family home on the very day Eloise vanished, suggesting a marriage already in its final, painful stages of collapse. Patsy herself would later tell police that she believed her husband may have been involved in the disappearance as a means of, in her words, prolonging the inevitable, a way of spiting her rather than ending the marriage outright. It's a devastating thing for a mother to say about the father of her children. And for the next 4 decades, it hung over Lindsay Worledge like a shadow that never fully lifted. He became, in the language police would eventually use in court, the prime suspect. But suspicion is not proof. Despite the intense scrutiny, despite the whispers around Beaumaris, despite living the rest of his life known publicly as the man many believed knew more than he ever said, Lindsay Worledge was never arrested. Never charged. Never convicted of anything. He denied any involvement in his daughter's disappearance for the rest of his life. Cold cases don't stay loud. They go quiet, and then they go silent, and the silence is its own kind of cruelty. By 1982, 6 years after Eloise vanished, police were still fielding roughly 6 calls a year connected to the case. None of them ever broke it open. A tip would come in, detectives would chase it, and it would dissolve into nothing, the same way every lead before it had. In 2003, 27 years after that January night, a coroner formally ruled that it was impossible to determine who was responsible for Eloise's disappearance. Patsy, speaking outside the court, said the family had come to their own form of closure years earlier. The kind of sentence that sounds peaceful on the surface and utterly devastating underneath it. Closure without answers. Acceptance without resolution. Detective Senior Constable Robert Nazaretian, who worked a renewed investigation into the case, confirmed publicly what everyone already suspected. Lindsay Worledge remained the prime suspect at the time of the disappearance. But confirmation of suspicion is not confirmation of guilt, and the case remained, maddeningly, permanently, open. Lindsay Worledge died in the early 2000s, 41 years after his daughter vanished from her bedroom, having never faced a single charge in connection with her disappearance. Patsy Worledge died in 2022. She left this world not knowing, not truly knowing, what happened to her firstborn child on that January night in 1976. 2 parents. 2 lifetimes spent under the same unanswered question. Neither one got to put it down before they died. In January of 2026, on the 50th anniversary of Eloise's disappearance, Victoria Police did something they had never done before in this case. They announced a $1 million reward. Not simply for information leading to whoever was responsible. The reward specifically includes payment for information that leads police to the location of Eloise's remains. A quiet, brutal acknowledgement of what everyone has long since accepted as the truth. Eloise Worledge is not out there somewhere, alive, having built a life under another name. She was taken from that room, and she did not survive it. Someone, somewhere, still knows what happened. 50 years is a long time to carry a secret. But secrets like this one have a way of outliving the people who kept them. Passed down, half-confessed, buried in the small details of families who've never quite been able to explain a certain night, a certain car, a certain silence. It's worth sitting for a moment on just how much this one case changed a country's relationship with safety. Before January of 1976, Beaumaris was the kind of suburb where you didn't think twice about an unlocked door. Afterward, an entire generation of Australian parents started double-checking window latches before bed. It's the kind of ripple effect true crime rarely gets credit for, not just the fear of one family, but the quiet, permanent shift in how thousands of strangers thought about their own children's bedrooms. And yet, for all that collective fear, the investigation itself kept circling back to the same maddening dead ends. Every lead, the green station wagon, the man near the shops, the sound of a car door in the night, got chased as far as it could go, and then simply stopped, as if the case itself were built to resist an ending. Think about what actually happened in that house. A mother checks on her daughter just before midnight. The girl is asleep, safe, breathing. A few hours pass. A hallway light, always switched off by the last parent to bed, is somehow left burning, and then, at some point before dawn, it goes dark again. Nobody in that house heard a window being forced. Nobody heard a struggle. Nobody heard their daughter, their sister, cry out. And that is, in some ways, the most haunting fact of the entire case. Not the cut screen. Not the unidentified car. Not even the whispers about her father. It's the silence. A house full of sleeping people, and somewhere in the dark, a little girl simply stopped being there. Go back to that window. That fly screen, cut clean, rolled upward, from the inside. For 50 years, that single detail has been the whole case in miniature. Proof that the answer to what happened to Eloise Worledge was never far away. It was close. It might have been in the house. It might have been someone she knew, someone who didn't need to break anything to get to her, because the way in had already been made for them. A little girl went to sleep in a safe suburb, in a locked-up house, surrounded by her family. And by morning, she was gone, leaving behind nothing but a cut screen, an untouched bicycle, and a question that, half a century later, Australia still hasn't answered. Somewhere, someone knows what happened to Eloise Worledge. She's still waiting to be found.